there's probably so much joy in being able to serve. I don't know that everybody intuitively knows that happiness often comes from serving.
Focus just on what we had ahead of us and the opportunities we had ahead, and don't look back at what you're missing.
Anytime when our expectations are off, that's when we're most likely to be unhappy, and that's where the angst and all of that is. But I love this idea that an antidote for that is just that we can plug it with some faith and trust and release some of those expectations and just know that the outcome will be different or better. I mean, if we can partner with God and trust that it's all going to be okay or something better is going to occur, what a beautiful way to think of things. Welcome to the Pretty Sister Podcast. I'm your host, Callie Stoyer. I'm so happy you're here today, a place where we are friends, where we cultivate kindness, where we talk about happy things that make me happy, that hopefully make you happy, and we have a lot of fun. So I'm glad you found your way here. We're going to spend a little bit of time together today, and you are in for a treat because today I have an old, good, fabulous, wonderful friend, probably my most amazing guest to date. This is very exciting because I have Julie Cook here. And if you're thinking you maybe heard of her, you probably have. Or maybe if you've seen her somewhere, you probably have. And I'll show you why, because if you're watching this on video, Julie is the person of the year for Utah County, and she's on the cover of this magazine. So she's actually been sitting in my living room all month. I've been looking at her face, looking, at her beautiful face, getting so excited for her to come and visit me today.
Thank you.
You're probably like, put it away. I've seen it enough. No. But I was actually, when I saw that you were named the person of the year, I was so excited. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, they got it right. Because no one deserves that title more. And for so many reasons, which we're going to talk about today, just because she's truly a light, somebody that just shares her gifts and talents with others. And I'll just share, before we get into it, a quick story that I don't know if you'll remember or not, but she's somebody who, through the years, as we've been friends, probably a decade now, I would say at least, that we've known each other. And she's definitely one of those people that when we met, and in fact, she met my sister first and became friends with her, with my sister Becky. And Becky then told me, Julie's a pretty sister. That's how we communicate with each other. And you probably remember this because she had told me, Julie's a pretty sister, you're going to love her. And I was like, okay, well, bring her on. Like, let's do this. And we gave you a Pretty Sister t-shirt. I can't remember when I gave that to you.
It's been a while.
It's been a long time. I think we might have been on a trip, or did I mail it to you, or did Becky mail it to you? I don't know, but at some point in time, she was such a pretty sister that we couldn't let it just stand like that. She needed to have a shirt, one of our t-shirts that says Pretty Sister. And I remember you were like, oh my goodness, you actually have a shirt. Like, this has more to it. And now that I'm bringing Pretty Sisters back in a bigger, grander way, that is what I meant. You are a pretty sister. It means a whole lot more than just a name. But that wasn't even what I was going to say. Sometimes we just go off on tangents here.
I love it. I love it.
But the thing I was going to say is I think we were in Taiwan together at a conference for doTERRA. And she's become somebody that I was always so glad when we would travel together and I'd see you, because you always had a golden nugget of information or wisdom to share with me. And I don't remember exactly what was going on in my life at the time, but I remember feeling angst and wanting something, being in a situation where I was praying for something. And I think we were just chatting during dinner, and just as girls do, we were sitting by each other. And you shared with me something that was on your mind that you had recently read. And it was a church talk from General Conference. And I can't remember the name of the talk, and you might remember it, but the phrase that stuck out with me was, but if not. And it was the story about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Yes.
It's like, I'm going to get this wrong. It's a mouthful. And this faithful story of, I'm willing to do whatever, I'm asking for something, but if not, it's okay. Like, life will go on. And I've had that phrase in my head so many times ever since. It was such a gift to me. And I think this is why I celebrate women and friendship so much, because we show up in each other's lives as these little angels, these little people that when we're, thankfully you were inspired, I believe, to share that thought with me, because it's obviously been something that I've kept with me for these past 10 years, just that thought, but if not, and the love in which you shared it with me, because it was exactly what I needed to hear in that moment. That things maybe aren't going to go exactly what I was praying for, but if not, that's okay. I can still have faith. So I see you as such a woman of faith and courage and perseverance, which I know, in a lot of that is why you were selected, I think, as.
And I'll just add that it was a combined Person of the Year with my husband, Greg. So it's both of us together that are Person of the Year.
Yes. Well, you complete each other, right? Yes. You're half of that person, which is amazing. Greg's an amazing person too.
Yes. That is interesting that you shared that, because I remember that conversation. I remember that conversation, and we were just in a room and chatting and stuff, I think waiting before something that we needed to attend. But that had been powerful in my life because it came to me in a time when I needed it. And my daughter, we were preparing to move overseas to live in China for 3 years. And my oldest daughter, was serving a mission in Chile at the time. And we found out probably 6 weeks before we left that she had a labrum tear in her hip, but she did not know, it hadn't been diagnosed at that time. And so they were down in Chile trying to figure out what was going on. And I was trying to get my other kids and get our house in order so we could move. And it was a very stressful time of life, and one that required a great deal of faith and trust. And then we got a call from, and she was on a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And in each of these missions, they have somebody that's a nurse or somebody that kind of looks after the health and concern of the missionaries. And at the time, we were planning on our daughter coming to China so that we could see her. And this mission nurse had called us and said, I don't think she's going to be in a position to come and travel. And I remember thinking, I was devastated with that news initially, and so concerned about her and her well-being, and also concerned if she needed surgery when she got home, and the transition with her coming out home and not having her mother there and her family there, and then if she had a surgery on top of it. I was, yes. And then I thought of my other kids that I was taking to China with us and how they needed their mom there. And I really felt so torn. And I remember one night, and it was right as they were making these decisions, and we had consulted with her. She was going to be meeting with her mission president, and they were going to make a decision. And I remember it was on a Monday night that I just thought, I need to just put this in the Lord's hand. And as we had, the missionaries weren't calling at that time, but she had permission to call us on that day. And we were just trying to discuss what would be in her best interest, and counseled that if her health was in danger, or if she was not able to do the work and holding her companion back, that maybe she should come home a few weeks early. And I remember the next day we didn't hear anything. She was going to be meeting with her mission leader, and we didn't hear anything. And I was a nervous wreck. And so worried. And then something happened about 7 o'clock at night that all of a sudden I remember just praying and just saying, Heavenly Father, whatever you need to have happen, I will still have faith. And so it was this principle of, I know that you can arrange for things and she can come home, but if not, and if we don't have a chance to reconnect as a family and see her before we have to leave for China. But if not, that's not going to impact my testimony and my faith. And a little bit, just a couple hours later from that, all of a sudden, all of this anxiety that I had been feeling and anxiousness and concern just went away. And at first I thought, oh my gosh, I have reached the tipping point and this is a nervous breakdown. But I recognized that later as that was the Spirit saying, all is going to be okay.
I'll just take this off your...
You don't need to worry about it. And what I didn't know, so the next day we got a call from our stake president saying that they had made a determination that they felt like she needed to come home and get the medical care she needed. And what I didn't know is as we did the time change, right around the time that I had received that peace, her mission leader had called her and said, you're going home on Monday. And she said, but we have this baptism. And he said, no, you're
going home.
You're going home. And she said, do I get any say in it? And he said, you absolutely do. He said, you go and pray about it, but I know you'll get the same answer. And that has been such a gift to me to be able to know how the Spirit spoke to me in that time and the peace. But also, since I had just gotten such benefit out of that, and as you were telling me about some of the situation, and I don't even remember the situation, but just sharing that that principle from that talk was powerful.
Yes. Well, and how amazing that that you were able to still move forward with faith regardless of the outcome. And I think that it's important for listeners to know that, I guess, to kind of normalize your situations that you might be in and Julie's, because it's probably, I would guess, that people who on the outside looking at your life at that time probably thought it was pretty glamorous. Moving to China with your family for a few years, being the, I guess we haven't told the audience yet that you're one of the 7 owners of doTERRA, which is a huge multi-billion-dollar successful company that you've been, founders of. So you've been a part of from the very beginning. That has been a journey for you, which will be fun to talk about a little bit. But it's required a lot of sacrifices. And so what you're talking about right now was one of those probably really big sacrifices in some of the, it's been how many years since you made that move to China? 7?
We moved in 2015.
Yeah, so 9 years ago.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago, but a huge early sacrifice that you made for the company that, again, is it glamorous? Is it exciting? But all those little details of each child that you have to consider and their needs and the decisions in doing so. I think it's just fun to pull the curtain back and see the behind the scenes and the things that make those big dreams or those big steps. It was a necessary step for the company to go through, for Greg to be over there opening up China. It's a big part of the business. Behind each thing is a mother, children, decisions, little tiny decisions that have to make things happen that are hard ones. But when you do it with that kind of faith, that's what makes it possible.
It's interesting that you positioned it just like that, because that was easily one of the most stressful times probably in our lives.
I can imagine.
And we had one of our other daughters had knee surgery, and then we found out and then she had tonsils out. So we had back-to-back different situations. And then she found out that she needed another surgery right before we were going to go. And I do remember just one day feeling the weight of everything.
Yeah.
And
you probably wanted to say, can we hit pause and maybe do this in a few years? But big business decisions are happening, and it's like, no, someone's got to go. Someone's got to do this. Yeah. You're the ones. Make it happen.
But a couple lessons I learned through that is there was one day in particular that I just remember just the weight of it, especially being so concerned with my daughter that it was unknown what was going on with her hip and everything that way. And it was almost like this voice in my head saying, you don't have to do this alone. And I think I was trying to do too much of it alone. And he was saying, let me help you carry this burden more than you are.
Yes.
And the first few months that we lived in China, the first couple months were okay. We didn't get our shipment for quite a while, and
meaning all of your stuff that
all
got
of
packed,
our stuff
coming over. So
we were living out of our suitcases. We had packed up in June, and then we didn't get it till after Thanksgiving. So because it got delayed in customs, it was crazy.
Yeah.
But there was one day that the kids were all super positive, and then there was one day that it was almost like somebody had just turned off the light switch, and they were kind of like, okay, this was a good experiment, but we're all ready to go home.
Our stuff hasn't even arrived, and we're ready to go home.
Yes. And it was interesting in that time because we had come back for Christmas, and we had one of our daughters who was a junior in high school, and she, in particular, it was a really rough time. And we joked about it because she had asked for a suitcase that year for Christmas, and we thought, I don't know if she thinks she's coming back. She might want to.
Is she packing to get out of here? Is that why she wants a suitcase?
And when I saw, we had our oldest two that were still living in Utah, and then the younger three that we had taken with us, because our other two were at BYU. And when I saw all of the sisters get back together, and I saw our daughter rejoin with her friend, I just thought, what are we doing to our kids? This is too, I don't know.
It's too hard.
It's too hard. And there was a decision point that we made of, do we stay or, are we going back, or do we just stay? And this might be a lot more spiritual side. I don't know what, but.
No, let's hear it. That's great.
Again, it was in listening to a general conference talk, and this time it was Elder Holland's talk, Don't Look Back. Or no, excuse me, it was Remember Lot's Wife,
yes.
I think is the title of it.
I think that's another one you shared with me that became a theme for me, and this was a different time. You became, we'd only see each other every once in a while. I was living on the East Coast, you were here, and we would get together and you would share these, you would drop these life-changing little talks or thoughts in my lap that then became themes for like a year. Because the Remember Lot's Wife talk and that concept became what was on repeat in my head that gave me courage to leave Maine and move to Utah.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, because it was like this idea of don't look back, just keep moving forward, have faith in the future. Yes, but you say your story. I'm just remembering because I forgot that you had given me that one too.
Yeah.
You're just like the wind beneath my wings. I love it.
Well, I remember for the first 4 months that we lived in China, I would see things that were going on back in Utah, and I would think, we're missing that, and we missed that event, and wouldn't that have been good to go to?
Yes.
And just I was focusing too much on what I was missing.
You're having FOMO.
I was having FOMO.
Yes, I mean it's a real thing our kids face.
Yes, yes.
FOMO.
And then we had actually it was in January after making the decision, okay, we're going back, and making a conscious decision to focus just on what we had ahead of us and the opportunities we had ahead, and don't look back at what you're missing. Don't look back.
It's amazing that principle right there is so helpful, because how often do we want to look back and look at the regrets or the things we're missing out on, and it's just a waste of time. It's the absence of having that faith to move forward.
That's exactly it. Yes.
It totally is.
Yes. And we had had a couple experiences, and then Greg and I had been in Nepal for one of the first co-impact sourcing trips for doTERRA. and had just a very special experience with the people of Nepal. And what a humbling experience that is.
Oh, yeah.
To be able to help build a school and help them just with things that we take so for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And right from there, I was able to go to Hong Kong, where we had a gathering for a women's conference. And for that, they were looking for a service project. And because of my involvement with Days for Girls, yes, I had suggested that they do that for this Asia. It was for the whole Asia area. Mm-hmm. So we had Celeste Mergens come, and she spoke, and we did a highly successful service project. And I was also able to be, and we were at the temple that trip for one of my friends who was receiving her endowments, and I was her escort for that. And I remember getting on the plane absolutely exhausted from being in Nepal and then going straight to this women's conference in this whirlwind.
Again, sounds glamorous, but when you break it down, those things are hard.
It was hard,
travel
but
and
so exhilarating and so fulfilling in a way that you can hardly even
put words to.
But as I thought about that, and it was another just little voice in my head, and it said, if you wouldn't have come back, this is what you would have missed out on. And I would have missed all of those rich opportunities.
Yes, that are things that shape you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And ways for you to serve others that, again, are so important. And this is how it works. This is how I feel like sisterhood and friendship works. You know, just us even remembering the little ways. I mean, there was few times that we would get to see each other, but they were rich in reward and powerful. And thank goodness that I was open to receiving that, because I think if we could miss it. I think we're in so many ways, there's opportunities for us to receive blessings and guidance, divine guidance that can come to us through sisters in friendship. You know, you had learned something and then you were passing it on to me, and then I needed that. And then it was super helpful for me to have the courage to move my family across the country, similar to what you had done. Mm-hmm. And, well, not similar. You had moved across the world.
That's still a big change.
I was just moving across the United States. Different. Not quite the same. But regardless, it was, you know, it was helpful. And we can help each other in those ways through just being willing to take the time, willing to share our knowledge and help each other, because we're all learning in different degrees and in different ways.
Yeah.
And so that's just one of the things I love about sisterhood. Okay, so we still have so much I want to talk about. It's like, where do we even go? Because I want to touch on a couple of the amazing things that you were recognized for, you and Greg, and what you're doing. And so do you want to just talk about that for just a second? Because there's some really cool projects that are in here.
So we have got two big projects that are kind of culminating, that have been several years in the making and are culminating all this year, which is exciting. So we've got the Cook Family Park that we've been involved with, and that's in Pleasant Grove, and they'll be doing the grand opening of that in the spring this year, either in May or June, as that's completed. And all of these projects, I'll just start out with this. One of our we've got some family values that we've identified. And one of our core family values is we've got a family foundation that's called the Cook Center for Human Connection. And we just believe in this.
No surprise that that's what it is. Like, I just smile when I see what you're doing and the ways it's showing up, because it's so authentically you. Like, having, been given the gift of getting to know you on a personal level, it just, like, the Cook Center for Family Connection is so you, because you're all about connection. In just a brief, like, if you had the chance to know Julie in person, you would instantly feel connected to you. Like, you have this gift and ability to connect.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
So you've learned to take that divine gift that I believe that you have and put it in a form of a foundation that they can reach and share other people. And I think that it's important to say this because as people are trying to learn how to fulfill their purpose, look at the gifts that are specifically yours, because we're all blessed with specific gifts. And this ability that you have to connect powerfully in even in short times, I think is special. And so I love that you've harnessed that in a way to share. So yeah, pay attention to those special gifts that are uniquely yours and how you can then share them with others, because that's what Julie's done. So tell us about it.
So the park is a way that we've found to help connect people. There are mental health benefits that they've found in studies that can actually, that this fostering of human connection and gathering that helps lift a community.
Yes.
And so
I believe that.
Yeah, so that is one of the foundational
things. This is why we want to party together and come together and celebrate. This is why we have weddings and birthday parties and all the reasons you'd want to go to the park to celebrate, because there's these mental health benefits and connection. And when you think about the way we're so disconnected now through our phones and social media, we've got to counteract that in powerful ways to bring people together, which is what you're doing and creating a space for in your community.
Well, and even as you and I are talking right now, there's oxytocin release as a mother is nursing a baby. And there's oxytocin release as two people are talking and making eye connection. And just this powerful connection and this powerful emotional release that both of us receive from this conversation. And then even in service, it showed that both the person who does service, the person who receives the service, and also just an observer, an onlooker, has this oxytocin release seeing service.
That's amazing. I believe it. Because after every time I record a podcast, I come away exhilarated from the conversation that we've had, from the connection that we've made, from the things that I've learned. And it feels like, I could just do this all the time. And then as I step away from it, though, I'll have self-doubt creep in or life and busy and anxiety over doing the next one. But when I stick with it and have the connection in that conversation, I am greatly rewarded every time.
Well, and I think even tonight, it's interesting that we're talking today because one of my friends is going through just some rough things with some family, with health stuff that just needed a little night out. So we've got just a few of her inner circle getting together to do some hydrotherapy. But I received some news yesterday that was really had a really hard impact on me. And I thought, I need that too. So here I was trying to do this for somebody else, but it's going to come back and benefit me and bless me with what I think I need right now. With
immediate rewards for service.
Yes.
I think we're always immediately rewarded. Maybe not as closely as what you're experiencing in the moment, but always when we step outside of ourselves, willing to serve or help someone else. So you're serving me to show up and do this podcast. We're benefiting from it. We can always help one another.
Well, and it was interesting. Someone we got several texts after receiving this honor that was so humbling, that there's so many people that deserve it in our community. So we were very humbled, and there were a lot of people that maybe that didn't surprise, that were close friends that congratulated us, but then there were some that weren't necessarily in our inner circle that had reached out and just congratulated us on this. And I remember one in particular, this friend, that she just said that anytime that she gets this impression to say something good, she was just going to put herself out there and do it. And I thought,
wonderful.
I love that. I love that, because I don't think any positive thing that you put out there is ever going to be rejected by someone.
No, we should always be very generous with our compliments.
Very
and authentic,
generous.
real and authentic. But when you feel that you want to compliment or say something, say it, because you never know who needs to hear that and who needs to receive it. So I love that. That reminder.
And on that note, we were talking about it a little bit before, but my one of my daughters, I remember she had gone away to a summer camp. They were just there for a week, but she came back and she had this kind of shift in her whole outlook. I didn't find this out till several years later, actually, from another friend who taught her at church that shared this with me. But our daughter had come away from that, and she said everybody in their group had something really awesome about them.
Yeah.
And she came back and she said that from then on, her outlook on things was she was going to every person she met, whether it was at school, whether it was a church group, whether it was at a sports type interaction, whatever it was, that she was, even the most difficult people, she was going to find out what was special about that person and get to know them until she discovered what it was. Because every person has something of value and something that is awesome about them that we just need to discover. Yeah. So I learned from my daughter. I loved that and tried to implement that.
Oh, I love that, and I love that you said the word discover, because that means like take the time to get to know, really look into somebody, because sometimes you can't know that at the very beginning, and it's pretty often that will make a judgment too soon before you've given somebody a chance or gotten to know them. But when you do start looking at people as special and that everyone has something unique to offer, and then are willing to take the time to discover that, how cool is that to think about?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really wonderful. So you're I think just really great at discovering ways that you can also serve and help, which you've been honored for. So the park is one of the ways that you're doing that, but there's two other really amazing projects. One of them I discovered as I went to the new primary children's hospital in Lehigh. This with a group of women from our church to donate books that we had collected over Christmas time. And so we went there to take a tour and to go deliver these books. And I was not surprised at all when I walked in to see your picture on the wall and that you were part of that building of that hospital. So what do you want to say about that? Tell us a little bit. It's fun to get some of the behind the scenes stories of what prompted you, because I know that you don't do anything without really having some inspiration, because there's many things that you could do with your time. All of us, there's so many things we could do with our time, with our talent, with our resources that you've been so blessed with through this journey of developing and growing doTERRA. But these are the ones you've chosen. So it's fun to hear about it.
So it's interesting how life gives you some nudges that take you places that maybe were unexpected, that you didn't think about. But we have been approached with a lot of good and worthy projects, and there came a time, I think it was probably about in 2018, the summer of 2018, as we had moved back from living overseas, that Greg and I were both trying to be aware of, we were approached many times, but trying to be intentional of what to do with the resources with which we had been blessed.
Yes.
And
which probably feels, I would imagine, like a really heavy stewardship in some respects, because you can only do so much to increase your happiness with wealth, for your family and whatnot. And then beyond that, there's good you can do, which I know is in your heart.
Well, and during that time, it was interesting, because I remember praying one time and just saying, what do you want us to do with your money? And as I said that prayer, I thought, it surprised me. I was really surprised by the words that I was saying. And at the same time, Greg was on a fishing trip with one of his good buddies in Alaska, who happened to work at Primary Children's and do a
Okay.
lot, very involved with Primary Children's. And Greg was having the same conversation with him and just saying, we are trying to just figure out what to do with our resources. And this friend of his, actually Russ Osgathorpe, he said, well, Primary Children's is going to be building a new children's hospital in Lehigh. You might want to consider doing something that way. And so we were actually the first people that met with, he arranged for us to meet with the top people at Primary Children's, and they had not even put together really a campaign for that hospital at that time. And so we met with them and talked about some different things, and they were directing us. We had some kids that had some orthopedic surgeries and different things that way, and were kind of directing us maybe towards making a donation on that front. But as we talked with them and asked them where there is the greatest need, one of the needs that they had the greatest need for, that they thought would be hardest to get resources for, was behavioral health.
Wow.
And that was our introduction, our foray into the mental health arena.
Let's just pause for a second. I just think that that's interesting. I'm not surprised, but maybe for the audience, I guess I just want to give weight for a second about this is such a plaguing problem for our society right now, is mental health, and that it's real. And thank goodness that we have people that are seeking inspiration and willing to direct attention and resources towards it. That's really neat.
Well, it's interesting because it was probably about 20 years ago, as Greg had a responsibility in the church, that he had a leadership role, and there was a 10-year-old boy in our neighborhood that took his life. And Greg was the one that had to relay that information to the father, who was traveling out of town.
10 years old.
10 years old.
That's heartbreaking.
And those experiences, I'll never forget that week, and the emotion, and how we were trying to support that family, and how you just wonder why and how that happened. And I think that was at the core of, and then also several friends that we had and extended family who had situations that with kids that had maybe attempted to hurt themselves, and families just not having the resources and not knowing where to go. And it's really a devastating thing that I think has touched every family, because of some of those experiences that caused us to make that decision to make a donation to behavioral health. And then one of the very next donations was also directed to behavioral health. So I think they had everything that they had initially planned on in the very early stages, and then have since been able to expand that because the need is so great. And the response was so great as well. But it was from following that nudge that we also ended up involved with the state of Utah's campaign, the Live On campaign. That was a suicide prevention campaign. They had Intermountain, they had the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they also wanted a private partner with this. And so they had reached out to us, and we accepted that opportunity. And so we found ourselves on the steps of the Capitol as they were announcing this campaign. And from that, there were some interviews. And one of our good friends had heard one of the interviews and approached us and said, I think you guys should start a foundation.
And that's what then led to this
And that's
foundation.
What led to the Quick Center for Human Connection, that provides resources to families all throughout the country through schools. But we would not have gotten there.
Without that initial prayer. Where do I spend it?
Without that, and then just having that nudge and following that with primary children's, and because had we not done that, had we not made that donation, I don't think they would have thought that we would be interested in doing anything with the Live On campaign. And it has opened up some doors and opportunities for us to help in ways that we, I don't think would have really even, it wouldn't have really even crossed our mind.
Which I would imagine, and you answer this for us, that probably feels so amazing. Like just to be able to do that with the resources, how does that feel?
I loved the word that you used a minute ago, and that was stewardship.
Yeah.
Because it is a stewardship and a responsibility that I think that there will be a time that we have to answer for what we have done with what we have been blessed with. And in the very early days, even before things started accelerating with doTERRA, Greg and I had made a commitment to each other and to God as well, as far as, what we would do with the resources. And so it's hard to articulate, because it feels, even this, getting this honor, it feels like we were just doing what we felt impressed to do in the first place.
Right.
That it doesn't feel like maybe we should have gotten the extra attention for it, because it just felt like what we were supposed to do.
Well, spoken by a truly humble person, which I think is what makes it so, makes you so appealing in my perspective, just that absolute humility, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. There's probably so much joy in being able to serve. I mean, you said that before, and be able to help others, that's the kind of happiness. And, everyone's always chasing happiness, wanting to be happy. We all want to be happy. I'm a big proponent of, yes, let's be happy in this life that we have this opportunity to live. But I don't know that everybody intuitively knows that happiness often comes from serving. The more you can serve, the more happiness it creates.
Yes.
And joy that you get to receive from it.
Absolutely.
So it's that giving that is, if we give more, we receive more. And you've been just a beautiful example of that. Now, we have to talk about the third. I know there's many ways that you guys are using, being good stewards of what you've received. But the third one that's mentioned in here that I think is so fun is the Ruth. But we got to talk about that, because I love that you guys are doing that.
Yes, we have. And that again started out as we found that there was a need for the Orem Hale Center has been operating for 35 years in a very small space, old house. They've been trying to raise money for a new theater for probably the last 15 years. And had a couple different potential sites, and then things fall through. And so again, we just saw a need in the community and started out that it was going to be just a donation, and now we are heavily involved in that, and we brought that to the doTERRA campus, and have hired others to help be able to make that as big a success. But it's also, again, a way to bring the community together.
Well, it falls under this umbrella of connection. And that's when I read the article and saw what you're doing and how it just weaves connection into it, I just thought, this is so beautiful. And you couldn't probably, I don't know, but like if you're taking a step back now, as you've seen it all play out, it's so beautifully planned, but it wasn't probably planned that way from the beginning.
No.
Right? And that's why I think when we can partnership with divine guidance and receive that direction and be willing to ask, like I love how you started with asking, like, what do I do? What do you want me to do? I'll do it. Having faith and courage to I'll do what you want me to do. And then when we include God in that process, we can, his options, his insights, it's amazing. It's so much more than we could create on our own. But
absolutely.
The through line woven through what you've done is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And you're exactly right. There's this unseen hand that is just guiding the process, that there's been times, key times in our life, both as we started doTERRA, and I feel like one of them is now with the Ruth Theater, that you do just kind of feel like you wake up and you're just kind of part of a chess set or something, and waiting to see where the next move is. And sometimes it surprises you, and sometimes sometimes it's hard. A lot of times, actually, it's hard, and you don't always know the outcome and how the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
Because there are times in life that you have these impressions and the outcome goes better than what you think. Mm-hmm. And there's other times that you have these impressions. And this has been an equally, if not greater, learning experience for me, when you have these impressions and your expectation of the outcome is not realized.
The but if not.
The but if not.
Yes.
And then when you accept that and don't become bitter, but just trust all the more.
Yes.
That is, I think, that's been a powerful tutorial in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because those are hard things to navigate. Anytime when our expectations are off, that's when we're most likely to be unhappy, and that's where the angst and all of that is. But I love this idea that an antidote for that is just that we can plug it with some faith and trust, and release some of those expectations, and just know that the outcome will be different or better. Because in those cases that we're talking about, it is going to be different. But when it's different than what we had wanted, and not maybe better in the
our expectation, yes,
that in the long term.
Yes.
That's the thing. We have to be willing to play the long game. It's like the stock market. You can't sell when it dips. You've got to hold and wait in the long term.
That's so key. If you've got a short-term vision, I think that limits how much you can do in life.
Yeah.
Where if you have this long-term vision and this long-term patience, then things do work out.
Yeah.
And it will all work out.
Yeah, everything will work out for my good. That's one of my favorite mantras, like just everything will work out for my good. And then I can just, in the moment, when things are disappointing and not going according to plan, that's okay. It's all going to work out for my good in the end. And it's not the end yet, guys.
Yes.
we're still moving. We're still going.
There is a story with Wendy Nelson this has been one of my nuggets.
Oh, good.
Absolute
She's dropping
nuggets.
Listen close. She's dropping a nugget. This is going to be our gift from the podcast.
But she was talking about how when her and President Nelson, who was then Elder Nelson at the time, were courting, they were scheduled to be married, but they did not want to get the rumor mill going, and she was tasked with finding a place for them to live. And she had taken her friend Sherry Dew with her to help find a place for them to live. And so they had seen a couple houses, and after they had gone into one of these houses, they came back into the car, and Wendy had asked Sherry if she would say a prayer that they'd be able to get that house.
Okay.
And as Sherry offered the prayer, she asked that they would get the house or something better. And then Sister Nelson talks about, she said that she called Sherry Dew that night and said, "Do you always pray that way?" Because she kept thinking about that. And they did not get that house, but they did get something better. And so for me, I love that principle, that sometimes if we say, please, 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 whatever it is, let me marry this person, let me get this house, let me get this job, whatever it is, that we might be limiting Heavenly Father, we might be limiting deity from blessing us with something even better.
Yes.
And so ever since I heard her share that, I have changed my prayers to, or something better, and not being so focused on just this little thing, because he might have something magnificently greater than what we anticipate.
No doubt he does, with the omniscience and the ability to see and have perfect understanding of us and who we are. I mean, I think we don't understand our capabilities. We limit ourselves so much, and we often do it with our fears and worries and that lack of faith. And so, yeah, I mean, if we can partner with God and trust that it's all going to be okay, or something better is going to occur, what a beautiful way to think of things, and to be prayerful and have intention surrounding that concept. I love it. I love it. As we start to wrap things up, you were mentioning before, and I wanted to just talk about it because this is all about sisterhood and fun, that you had a really fun activity with your girlfriends.
Sometimes things happen by mistake.
But I want to hear about this.
Sometimes things happen by mistake, and or not necessarily, it just kind of happened. But a year ago, I had I was recovering from an injury from my knee. And was still feeling good, but had to be off of it for a period of time.
Okay.
And so since I couldn't really go out and do much, I invited a group of friends over, and we each planted. I love planting, and we have a little greenhouse that we have stuff. So
I love that you, while injured, intuitively knew to cheer yourself up, to invite girls over to hang out. Like, she's such a girl's girl. Like, you're smart. You know how to nurture yourself.
Exactly.
You know
it's like, if I can't go to them, then I'm going to come to you.
We're going to gather, because that is a secret to happiness. Okay.
So we each just planted a flat of different herbs or flowers. So we had, basil and cilantro and different kinds of flowers. And then we let them grow in the greenhouse for about 5 or 6 weeks. And then the week of Mother's Day, we all just came together and had lunch, and everybody took, so if there was, we just all took a section from everybody's flat.
Oh, fun.
So you'd come away from some cilantro from Julie, and from Callie you'd get, something, another herb, and from everybody. So then we all went home with this flat with kind of something to bloom from all of our circle of friends. And I
love that.
We all just nurtured each other. So several of them said, they said, I don't have any expectations on Mother's Day from my family, because I was fed this week. Yes, that they said I felt like I was taken care of, that now if it doesn't reach my expectations, I'm still going to be good. Yes.
I'm good. Well, and that's how we fill each other up as girlfriends.
Yes.
In such a beautiful way.
Yes.
I love that.
I love the pretty sisters concept that you and your sisters came up with. And I don't have sisters, so I was so honored when Kelly and Becky said, "Guess what? You're a pretty sister." And I loved that. And I also loved that just by hearing that, it makes you feel happy. And yes, it makes you feel a little bit prettier.
It does. It's like you just want to sit up and straighten your little imaginary crown. I mean, that is the gift of it, and why we share it, and why I'm sharing it with all of you is I want you and everyone to understand and know that you are a pretty sister, that you have divine qualities and attributes, that you are beautiful just the way you are, and that I see that in you, and I honor that in you. And I think often, sadly, we just don't see it in ourselves. But that's the gift of sisterhood and friendship, is that we can point that out in each other.
Yes.
And I think often we do that. And my girlfriends, people do that for me. And I'm so grateful, because, we just don't always see our gifts as somebody can outwardly. And when you will take the time to point them out and be generous with your compliments, we talked about that earlier, it can be such a gift to somebody else to help them to more fully connect with who they are and living their purpose.
Yes.
Because when you draw them out and point out those things, we hear it and it's like, oh, you think I'm that? Then I'm going to be that.
Yes.
And
yes.
so you act it more and you show up more in that way. So when you notice something about somebody else, say it. So one thing, we'll wrap this up and end, but there was a quote that we chatted about. Do you mind pulling that up? I want you to share that.
I would love to.
Yes.
I would love to.
Yeah, she's going to find that quote, and we're going to end on this quote about faith, because I think it's so important. And again, it also embodies who you are so much.
Well, thank you. And I think this principle has been the guiding principle behind all of the projects that we've been with doTERRA, with the hospital, with the park, with everything. It's this principle that we learned, and this is from Boyd K. Packer. But he said, there are two kinds of faith. One of them functions ordinarily in the life of every soul. It is the kind of faith born by experience. It gives a certainty that a new day will dawn, that spring will come, that growth will take place. It is the kind of faith that relates us with confidence to that which is scheduled to happen. This is the part that I love. There is another kind of faith, rare indeed. This is the kind of faith that causes things to happen. It is the kind of faith that is worthy and prepared and unyielding, and it calls for things that otherwise would not be. It is the kind of faith that moves people. It is the kind of faith that sometimes moves things. It comes by gradual growth. It is a marvelous, even a transcendent power, a power as real and as invisible as electricity. Directed and channeled, it has great effect. And
wow.
Isn't that
I get the chills
amazing?
Just hearing that.
Yes.
It is amazing. It's no wonder, with that being your guiding principle, that kind of faith, that kind of calling upon power, it's no wonder you've been able to accomplish the things that you've been able to accomplish.
Well, it's with this unseen
Yes.
hand guiding things, because we can't take credit for it, but that's what, yeah. Yes.
Well, and so we are going to wrap up, but maybe with that quote, knowing that it's something you've given a lot of thought to, and you've been putting it into practice, what one or two things would you just say to our listeners of how do you do that? How do you cultivate that? How do you have that? How do you exercise it? Because we all need to have that kind of faith to make big things happen in our lives, and not just for us, but for the greater good that we are supposed to show up and serve others.
I think one thing is not to be afraid. I think fear inhibits us from doing a lot that we otherwise would do. And then I think the other thing is being intentional and asking for that. And looking for those opportunities, because if we just sit back and expect things to just happen, then it might not. A lot of times we have to get out of ourselves, and we have to be moving forward and proactive in doing things in order for these big things to happen.
Yeah, I love it. Those are some great words of wisdom and really good things to leave you with to think about, because you can have access to that type of faith. You can have access to that type of power, and asking and not being fearful and being proactive. Those are really helpful points. Julie, thank you so much for being here. It's been so fun to reconnect and to share you with all of our pretty sisters. That's the fun that we get to have on this podcast, is we get to share each other.
And I adore you as well. Kelly is wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, pretty sisters, that's it for this podcast. Again, we honor you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for wanting to learn and to grow together as pretty sisters. And to you, I say, stay pretty, and we'll see you next week.